This is our fossil HQ. It's manned at the moment by Dr. Anjana Khatwa, who's our resident geologist.
Hello.
And we've got Chris Moore here, local fossil legend. And we've got all our helpers. Hello, everyone. Are we going to find ichthyosaur? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Tell me, have we got any chance?
Oh, we've got lots and lots of chances. I mean, it's the height of the summer, but there are loads of people out there passionate about fossil collecting, and we are going to find lots of fossils to show.
And what have we found so far?
There's a great diversity of fossils here on this table, from ammonites to belemnites. I mean, it's a real showcase for what the Jurassic Coast can offer.
And why is it, Anjana, that this coast is just such an amazing place to find fossils? Why is it so special?
The Jurassic Coast is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's 185 million years of Earth's history in just 95 miles of coast. And if we look towards the east all the way to Studland, those are the Cretaceous rocks. These limestones and chalks were deposited in lagoons and swamps. And right here in the middle, where we're standing right now, 200 million years ago was the Jurassic period, and these rocks were forming in deep seas with all sorts of interesting marine reptiles swimming around. And towards East Devon are the Triassic rocks. They're the oldest rocks in this sequence, and they were formed in deserts.
We've just got this little one here. It's beautiful. I've just been shown. What's going on with that?
It's got mother of pearl on it. Mother of pearl fossilised in an ammonite.
Isn't that incredible?
Brilliant, beautiful fossil.
And that was just found today, already?
It's gorgeous.
Pearlised ammonites.
It's just stunning, especially in this evening light. It just shimmers.
Now, the plesiosaur that I met in Oxford had a long, thin neck and a tiny head, and this is a very different beast, Anjana, isn't it? It's almost hard to believe that this creature was ever real. But it's a replica of a real skull, right?
It is, and the real skull, the pliosaur, was actually found in Westbury in 1994 actually, and this is a reconstruction of that skull, and it's just astounding. I mean, the actual length of the skull is about 1.8 meters, which meant that the creature itself was 8 meters long. I mean, it's just mind-blowing, isn't it?
It's mind-blowing. So it's one of the ones that we saw in the film that had this sort of short neck and the big heads. I mean, you couldn't imagine this on a long, thin head. It just simply wouldn't work. But these were apex predators, presumably. I mean,
they were extraordinary species. I mean, they were at the top of the food chain. They were dominating the food webs, really, in the Jurassic seas. And they were fantastic predators, great hunters.
I mean, this could easily eat me and you, probably just as an hors d'oeuvre. But they had an incredible bite force, right?
They did. I mean, if pliosaurs were around today, their bite was so powerful, it could have cut a small car in half. That's how amazingly strong they were.
Gosh, that's extraordinary. I mean, they were sort of like, I mean, they weren't dinosaurs, they were marine reptiles.
That's right.
But they were the kind of the T-Rex of the sea, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, incredibly domineering creatures. And if we just have a look over here at the jaws, I'm just going to position myself so we can have a look at some of the features of the teeth. And what you can see, actually, are these ridges on the teeth themselves. And they have a fantastic function. If I don't be so graphic about it, but they are fantastic for slicing through the flesh of their prey and actually making a clean entry and an exit wound, which makes it easier to kind of crunch, 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 swallow and go down the gullet into the tummy.
I see, a bit like a sword. They just stop the suction so they can just go in and out.
Yes, that's right.
And you know, this was obviously once a sea during the Jurassic period. These are marine reptiles. Are we likely to find examples of this around here?
Absolutely. A couple of years ago in Weymouth Bay, a fantastic pliosaur specimen was found, and it's the Pliosaurus cavani, which is a slightly different species to this. It's more dominant. It was larger, and the skull was 2 meters long, which made the creature itself 18 meters long in length.
What is crud, Anjana?
Well, I mean, as a geologist, as a scientist, we use all of our senses to really explore natural things like this. So obviously it's a rough textured rock. Sometimes we can smell things. It smells very oxidized. The color is very orange. So we know something about it metallic as oxidized, you know. So, and what we also have are hand lenses. They're our greatest tool. So if I can look inside the rock, I can see that the matrix, and this is a majority of the content that makes up the rock, is very, very fine grained. The other thing that I can see are broken up shell fragments and other smaller bits of gravel. So what that tells me is that this is forming in an environment that's being kind of shifted around with currents, and we do see that with, you know, wrecks underneath the water. The other thing that's really quite interesting is that, you know, yes, the wreck was off it was off Dalston Head, so we know that the source rock is a limestone, and as that weathers and breaks down, the mud will be formed from that source rock. So it's alkaline in nature, and essentially this cemented mud, which is what it is at the bottom of the seabed, has formed around these objects, providing it with a protective casing.
So that's fantastic. So the sediment that's formed around this has actually helped preserve it in some way.
It has actually, yeah, and it's just a fantastic coincidence. And in 100 million years' time, it will turn into its own rock in its own right, a piece of, history.
Well, I'm back here with Anjana because we've got some fantastic quarry finds. They're not from a Portland limestone quarry, but from around the coast in the Isle of Purbeck. And what I'm excited about is because everybody is very familiar with ammonites and calcified fossils. But this is something really special, isn't it? It might not look it looks a bit peculiar, but this is fossilised wood. And what I want to know, Anjana, is how does soft cellular tissue like this, how would these trees have become fossilised? And what does that tell us about the environment around them?
Okay, so I'm going to take you back in time 140 million years ago.
Please
and
do.
Imagine we're standing ankle deep in a salt lake and we're surrounded by trees. So what's actually happening is that briny water of the salt lake, those trees are soaking up that water, and eventually what will happen to that poor old tree is that briny water isn't very healthy for it, and it will topple over and it will fall into that muddy lagoon. Then eventually what will happen is that the cellular structure, it will be replaced by this briny solution. It's actually got a preservative kind of nature to it. So over time, as a tree becomes fossilized, not only is it buried in rock, but that cellular structure is preserved because of this solution.
And how it is preserved as well. I mean, it's almost like holding a piece of wood, but one that's been, just the detail on it is just amazing. And what kind of a tree would this have been?
Well, in the Purbeck beds, we tend to get very ancient species of cypress or juniper, and they were really kind of interesting trees. And believe it or not, you still see them today. If you're going to Cyprus or Mediterranean biomes, you still see these types of trees. They're still alive. I find that absolutely extraordinary, how they have survived the dinosaurs, It's extraordinary.
Yeah, I know there's not enough props given to the trees because, they were there before the dinosaurs, and they're still here.
Yes.
So we've got a forest of juniper, a swamp, and then we also have another fantastic find here from Purbeck, don't we, which is just amazing because it's a huge footprint, isn't it?
It is. And if we go back, back in time to that 140 million years ago, back to that lagoon, it was not a tranquil place to be because of these beasts. And this is a beautiful footprint, and it's from a megalosaur. And it's a dinosaur that dominated this environment. He was 9 meters tall. He was a ferocious meat eater. And, he would have fed on smaller herbivorous dinosaurs in those kind of forested areas. But he was a contender. He was at the top of his tree there.
So now the megalosaur, that's a theropod.
Yes, it is.
Now,
yes.
there's the theropods. The theropods are exciting because they are the ancestors of birds, aren't they?
Absolutely.
And so actually, you could say, that's a theropod there, flying in the sky.
Seagull over there.
There's one over there as well. They're all around us still.
They are, yes.
So, and what other creatures might have been languishing in this, or running away from this theropod?
Yeah, well, it was a really rich environment for kind of lagoonal species. So as a zoologist, you'll be very aware of alligators and crocodiles. And back in that period, there is this really kind of strange creature called a Goniofolus. And in fact, over in Purbeck, somebody I know actually found a beautiful skull of a Goniofolus. And if you can see it and get to the County Museum in Dorchester, the Dorset County Museum, have a beautiful specimen of that Goniofolus skull.
Fantastic. Well, that's definitely going to be worth seeing.